Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles, and I'm very excited to be introducing our special guest this week. And before I do that, I want to just say a few things, which is one, thank you for being a listener and subscriber to the Mile High Podcast. We have this on multiple social media and podcast channels. Most notably on iTunes in 35 countries. It's being downloaded continuously. Everywhere I go, people are saying how much they enjoy the podcast or are grateful to continue to contribute to people's expansion in their philosophy, vision, and strategy for chiropractic. And also, if you have not already registered, join us at Mile High August 18th to 21st, www.milehighchiro.org. Today's esteemed guest is one of our most featured speakers this year at Mile High. He's going to be doing an incredible program closing out our Friday night, as well as a breakout session. He's a 1995 graduate of Logan. He practiced for 8 years in Costa Rica, one of the largest upper cervical practices ever. He's been a faculty and administration member of Life West, involved with multiple consulting and coaching programs, helping Kaizen wellness, worksite wellness, now private coaching through Shawn Dill. .com and the becoming legendary Black Diamond Club. So without any further ado, welcome Dr. Shawn Dill.
Hey, thank you, Danny. It's great to be here with you.
I'm grateful to have you here. I know you speak all around the world, and chiropractic audiences are always very excited to hear what you share. On your speaking page, you had something that I thought was just an incredible quote. Have a conviction stronger than your desire to please. Why is that important?
Well, that's probably one of our signature pieces to almost every talk that we give. Some people like to point out that we speak about Rosa Parks. The story there is sort of tied into the Rosa Parks story where, history only remembers people who have had a conviction stronger than their desire to please. And so, if as chiropractors we're looking to make an impact, or we're looking to make history, or we're looking to change history, to me, if you study anybody who's remembered in history, it really starts with their conviction. Oftentimes they had a conviction that went against the grain, that was different than the norm, but because they were convicted in that, and oftentimes because of that conviction, they faced opposition. And you and I both well know that if you're going to have a position and it's not the popular position, you're going to face opposition. But their conviction is what pushed them and propelled them through in the face of opposition, in the face of adversity. And that, to me, is what makes or sets somebody up for making history.
Yeah, and hey, as chiropractors, with the history of the chiropractic profession, there's a lot of people that have gone against the grain. The whole profession has gone against the grain, and it's one of the things we have to, if you're not ready to do that, you might have chosen the wrong career, right?
Absolutely.
to some degree, and you, in addition to the other things we mentioned, you traveling the world, teaching people the art of the specific and opening the specific centers. I most recently heard that you did such an incredible job at DG down in Australia that you were one of the highlighted speakers. Tell us about what you shared there.
At DG?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I
Good
have to say
job.
that the chiropractors and the chiropractic profession in Australia have a very special place in my heart. I really didn't know what I was getting into. I received the invitation from Dr. Billy Chow, went down there, and we just hit it off. I think that we have a very special friendship. Billy's coming out, actually. He's going to be making the trip out from Adelaide in Australia out to Dublin in September for the Black Diamond Club workshop. To come out for a weekend, to spend a weekend with us and work on marketing constructs, that shows a huge level of commitment. What I shared there was these concepts about conviction. I talked about protecting the dynasty. I talked about why that is important, that we honor and remember our history, our forefathers, and not just chiropractically. So I'm not just talking about Didi. I'm talking about everybody in our lineage who has sacrificed or paid a price to help us to be where we are today. So I talked about that. I also talked about some of the marketing concepts because, Australia is a very unique situation, and, we can learn a lot. We could either look at that from our position in the United States and say, well, thankfully it's not us, or we could learn and understand that probably someday it will be us. They're facing a lot of opposition there, both internal and external, and it's a real sort of scary time that they really need to get their message right. They need to make sure that they are communicating and projecting to the public very clearly what it is that they do and what it is that they don't do. And actually, I'm not sure if this is like an official announcement, but I'll be going back in February back to DG.
Excellent.
And they have, I believe it's their 20th or 25th anniversary. They have an incredible lineup of people coming from the United States. I'm just super honored to be able to be a part of that program again. And like I said, the chiropractors in Australia have a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, and I see all the things they're going through, and I don't want to see the same thing happening in the U.S. So you're absolutely right. We need to learn from that. And let's talk about that, which is getting our message out. To me, and correct me if you feel differently, to me, marketing really comes down to getting your message out of what it is that you do. And I know you have a tremendous expertise in marketing. What do you feel is the starting place for marketing chiropractors?
Well, two main things that I think are really important that I think that oftentimes chiropractors have a little bit of confusion about. First of all, probably every chiropractor as a end goal is they want new patients, right? That's their whole thing is, their practice is patient driven. We could have a whole separate discussion about why that's probably not the smartest choice, that you probably don't want to be just new patient driven. A retention driven practice would be far better. But most chiropractors in today's day and age are really concerned about new patients. And so they think that getting new patients is a product of marketing. And I'd like to make sure that, first of all, we're really clear that marketing does not create new patients. What marketing does is it creates awareness, and it creates awareness about who you are and what you stand for. Now, once there is awareness about who you are and what you stand for, it's the sales process that drives new patients. And this is also another real touchy subject that chiropractors oftentimes have this idea that, oh my gosh, I don't like sales. Or even, in what you're doing with Mile High, we get this all the time that, well, I don't like, speakers that sell from the stage. And I understand what they're saying, but at the same time, I think that we should understand that we are all, as human beings, we're engaged in sales processes 24/7. I mean, literally from the time that you wake up. You wake up this morning and you say, "Wow, I think I saw that you got a brand new coffee maker." I'm not a coffee fan, so I don't know if it was an espresso machine. It looked pretty bomb. It looked pretty complicated. So let's say you wake up in the morning and you're like, yeah. So you've got your brand new, your coffee gadget, and you're like, hey, you tell Rochelle, I think I'd like an espresso, and she says, well, maybe what about a latte? Even just right there, that's a sales conversation because somebody has to be able to communicate and convince the other person on why their theory, their mindset, or their desire is the one that we should follow. Every day, Lacey asks me, what would you like for dinner? Well, she's a vegetarian, so there's a sales conversation that goes on because I usually say steak, and then she'll say, "Well, Shawn, you should eat some vegetables." And then so we have a conversation to see whether or not she can sell me on the idea of vegetables, or if I can sell her on the idea and get away with just an all meat dinner. Sales is continual, right? So that would be number one, is really understanding that you have to have a strong marketing system, but you also need to have a strong sales system. If you just had marketing, you have a lot of people that knew who you were, but you wouldn't have really any patients because they wouldn't really know how to engage you. I actually find that chiropractors too are very weak at sales. I mean, because there is this stigma, and because certain people have said that it's a bad thing, they're necessarily weak at it, and so they go out and they create a lot of awareness, but they don't know how to get the people to come in. Oftentimes people confuse this too. Another term that's out there is the close. Really, closing is not really in 2016. It's not something that's very frequent. I mean, it is there as a sales construct, but we're not just constantly closing. You know, the old ABC, always be closing. We don't always have to be closing because we live in a society that in large part is self-closing, right? I mean,
Right.
probably if you think about your last car purchase, what you do is you research, you find out a lot about it, and then you actually on your own, you closed yourself. Then you went to the lot to actually negotiate the sale. So the sales process and cycle looks a little bit different than it did, say, back in the IBM age, where a lot of the sales
Right.
information comes from. The second thing that I think is really important for us to understand is the difference between ideal client and target market. And in fact, we're going to be doing it at one of the breakouts. We're going to really be drilling down on this and helping the people in the breakout session to really determine what their ideal client and their target market is. Ideal client is this sort of fictitious, mythological idea of what the perfect patient would look like for you. I find that oftentimes females relate to this a lot better, right? Because when you're in the dating world, oftentimes at a very young age, females, and some males too, but females oftentimes have a list, this list of everything that they're looking for in the perfect mate. Well, that perfect mate may not exist. Somebody might not come along that meets all of the criteria, but when you're going through the process, you're looking for some or the majority of the criteria. Maybe some of the criteria are non-negotiables and some of the criteria are, a little more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Once we've established that, that's your ideal. Target market defines where you would find them. So as a chiropractor, we should have defined our ideal patient. Target market is where we would find people like that. One of the examples that I would use is if on my ideal list for a relationship, I had listed someone that was very spiritual. Maybe there was a particular religion. Maybe I said they were Mormon or they were Christian. If that was on my ideal list, and I told you, Danny, I'm trying to meet a young lady who's very spiritual, you said, hey, this is a no-brainer. Let's go to Vegas and hit up some clubs. Well, that would be a mismatch, right? And this happens all the time. This is a target to market mismatch. If you are looking for a certain type of patient that you want, a profile for your clinic, you have to be marketing in the areas that's most likely that you'll find that particular patient. Otherwise, we end up with target to market mismatches. Now, this is also one of the biggest reasons why we can't copycat marketing, right? So it would not be smart for me just to look at what you're doing. We had dinner the other day, and your clinic is rocking, and you're seeing great numbers. And there would be naturally a temptation for me to say, well, what are you doing to get all these patients? The reason why I didn't say that at dinner is because I didn't know at that time when we were having dinner who your target market was.
Right.
Now, if your target market was blue-collar workers who worked in factories and had great insurance, and the marketing strategies that you use to drive those people in, that would be absolutely terrible for me to use if my target market was females, stay-at-home mothers that were of high socioeconomic status, because the marketing strategies would be very different. And we live in a copycat world, but I want people to understand that first and foremost, you have to understand the target that the marketing strategies are driving in. In fact, oftentimes in real deal marketing, when you hire a marketing firm, they're more interested in target market and ideal client than they are the actual product. And because we're chiropractors, we get very hung up on the product, and we pay very little attention to target market. And one of the biggest mistakes that you can possibly say to a marketer is, I want help marketing chiropractic. And when they say, who's your target market? This is the worst. Anybody with a spine. I mean, that doesn't exist.
Well, it's like, oh, they have a pulse and an atlas. Let's.
Yes. And that's a surefire way to get the marketing firm that you're trying to work with to just get up off the table and walk away from you.
Right. and I know for you to do what you've done, working with Michael Port, getting certified as a book yourself coach. I mean, you've had to really hone your marketing and help people. And very few people I am as impressed with as I am with you to see what you've done with the specific centers. I think I've only heard of that the last 5 years, maybe. The expansion that you've got, you have had to really work on target market and help them work on their target market. Otherwise, you'd never have the growth that you've had, most certainly.
Yeah, and I think that's also one other just element, not really related to this. I think that it's really important for us to highlight the importance of patience. It's been 8 years that we've been doing the specific chiropractic centers. We started out with one clinic, obviously. We grew to five. There's a couple interesting points in business. So anybody who's interested in scaling, there's a couple danger zones. Typically in business, like 13 is sort of a dangerous number, not an unlucky number, but somewhere in that point. It happens again around the 17 area. There's these growth spurts where as you scale and you grow, you get where your current systems and processes cannot sustain the growth beyond that. And so if you land on these danger points, you run the risk of really sort of self-destructing. I've seen a lot of other chiropractic groups go out and do this, right? Where they try to scale, they get to a point, they grow really quickly, but they don't have the infrastructure. And so the strategy really that we utilize there is create infrastructure and then grow into that. Then we sit, currently we're at 18 clinics. We'll sit there for a little bit, create new infrastructure, and we'll make a new push. Our next push, we want to end up somewhere around 20, and then we'll make another push to try and go to 50. But what we do is we create the infrastructure for 50 before we then grow to 50.
Right.
But yeah, you have to have a lot of patience. That takes 8 years. That takes a lot of times. I think that oftentimes chiropractors come out of the chute too, and they're like, I want 5 associates and 48 clinics, and they don't create systems and processes to support that.
Right, right, totally, and that's exactly what happens. And I know we have a mutual friend, Liam P. Schubel, and he says that it all starts with vision. So what's the vision that you have for the specific centers? What did it start, and where is it growing to?
Well, I think it's very similar. There's other chiropractic offerings that have had a similar vision to try and provide access to the population that we serve. Again, not popular, but I am going to say that my personal vision is not necessarily to serve every man, woman, and child on the planet. First of all, because I realize that I'm just one person, right? So that's just physically impossible. That was kind of what got me into this idea of scaling. Was I realized I myself couldn't see everybody on the planet. And so the best way to expand my service would be to scale the business through teaching more chiropractors. The other day I heard somebody was kind of knocking the business model. Let me just lay out the business model so that those that are knocking it would realize that they're being foolish, because I'm not hiding it. We teach the art of the specific because you have to be trained in the art of chiropractic. Now, again, I'm not particular, I'm not promoting a particular technique. That's the technique that I do. I think that whatever technique you do, you should be really good at it. I'm not a huge advocate of having many, many, many tools in your tool belt. I'm a huge advocate of being really good at one thing. I will just say, just from a business construct, when you look at that, when we look at like the general store, you have Walmart in the number one spot, and in distant second, you have everybody else. Maybe Target, but there's a huge gap there. On the specialty side, when you want to specialize in something, there is room for any number of players in that market. If I oftentimes speak about, high-end handbags where you would have Fendi and Coach and YSL. Probably not Coach, but Louis Vuitton, Chanel. On the high end, there's no limit to what you can command, and they're not pushing each other out of the market on the high end. On the low end, it's really difficult to compete because you have such low margins. So number one was I can't service everybody. And that was what attracted me to Michael Port's work. I figured that the best thing would be for me to market myself and train myself to serve the people who I was meant to serve. So what we did is we created a program to teach people the art of the specific. We opened up opportunities internationally where we take outreach program trips to El Salvador. Next year, we will be going to Mexico. In the past, we've gone to Cebu, and we're looking at several other options out there to bring this type of chiropractic out to the world. Now, inside of those opportunities, I just want to let people know too that we don't go into other countries to practice, and that's not what we're doing. We only go into countries where there is not currently legislation to regulate chiropractic in an effort to create that legislation. That's it. Once the legislation is created, that opens doors for people to go down into that country and practice legally, and there would be no reason to have an outreach program. I mean, so I'm technically trying to actually put the outreach programs out of business, if you will. I'm trying to eliminate them, but what I'd like to see is the legislation, the regulation of chiropractic in those countries where we go. Once we've done that, we are able to get some exposure with the people who are interested in the particular technique, and then we have created a place for them to go in the specific. Now, in the specific, we have 18 clinics. There's 30 chiropractors that work with us, and we have a great track record. People that come and work with us stay with us. They stay with us for a very long time. It's few and far between that people were with a specific and are not. In fact, you're hard pressed to find people like that. Mm-hmm. They do exist, but I mean, it's not. I mean, it's very infrequent that happens. Our associate doctors do very well. Nobody's complaining. Nobody's feeling exploited. What we're doing is we're training them and providing them opportunities. And then the last part is we are working on creating opportunities through the infrastructure that we've created now to be able to self-finance the opening of new specific chiropractic centers for our associates as they go out into practice. That's the business model. If people think that I'm hiding something, I mean, just let's refer them to this podcast. I mean, I just laid out what the business model is. The vision then at the end of that is I want to make specific upper cervical care accessible to those who desire to access it. And that's a big distinction. I think that, in my world, I'm really not trying to convince people. And it just makes my life easier. I think that there's people that are out there. I see them on social media that, I kind of feel like they're banging their heads against the wall, but they're out there trying to convince people. I have realized, at my age that there are a lot of people that want what we have. They just don't know that we have it. They don't know that we actually do what they're looking for. They don't know that chiropractors are doctors of the nervous system. They think that chiropractors are back doctors. Once they realize what it is that we do, they're like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted that. Once they've said, I've always wanted it, it's really easy to command the fee that you want. It's really easy to navigate the fact that we don't take insurance because they're the one that wants the access. They're the ones that are asking us to provide them the service. And so really what I want is for those people who are in that position, I want there to be a specific chiropractic center nearby that they can access. And it's as simple as that.
And the way you've done that and broken that out is really an incredible model, I think, for people to realize, because I call it like there's a chiropractic generalist, and then there's a specific chiropractor. And a specific chiropractor, whether it be upper cervical or like I do network spinal analysis, they have a particular protocol that they're trying to do. They're less general about addressing the spine. And that you've provided, I'm going to help you train and master this approach and provide that as a resource, and then a way to practice it, in an outreach setting, right, is amazing. So there's that resource, and then you're also helping them have a resource of schools of how to actually do that in practice. That's incredible. I mean, it's bringing a lot of valuable resources that they aren't getting access to in chiropractic school. I think it's incredibly admirable. So, and I really appreciate that about you. In the marketing area, I know one of your big topics that you're known for is marketing to the 90. What is that? What is that for the people that aren't aware of what that means?
Well, like you mentioned earlier, I practiced in Costa Rica for 8 years, and in Costa Rica, chiropractic was whatever I said it was. I mean, there were very few chiropractors. I was blessed to be featured on a national television show on a monthly basis where I would go on and we would talk chiropractic. And people flocked to come in to see me. And I was like, this was great. And so when I moved to the States, I was like, how hard can this be?
Right.
Now, also, granted, the reason why I went to Costa Rica was because when I graduated in 1995, this was this time of transition going into managed healthcare. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to deal with insurance. And so for me, the best way to not deal with it was to bounce. I went to Costa Rica.
Right.
So in 2004, I figured, well, I'm going to move back to the States. How hard can this be? I moved back to the United States and I realized something. I realized that since the inception of chiropractic, we've seen, and I'm being super generous here, 10% of the market. the reality is that number is probably somewhere between 1 and 3% if we talk about the population that has a next appointment, right?
Right.
It's actually under care currently. Not that they went one time or had an uncle that went, but they have an appointment with their chiropractor. And I realized also that that number really hasn't changed since our inception. In fact, it's gone down recently.
Right.
Even with the emergence of all this talk about increasing market share and utilization and all these people that have penetrated the market, our utilization is not going up. This is what I've determined is that we have created marketing constructs that appeal to a very small subset of the community at large, like spinal screenings. I make a joke that, spinal screening is like wearing an orange jumpsuit with your spine and standing in front of Walmart. 10 people walk by, 9 out of 10 people, and you know this if you've ever done a screening, see you and they calculate the largest geographical radius to get to the door and go around you, right? They calculate, because they don't want anything to do with you, because they're like, this is crazy. And that one guy out of 10, that's the one that's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? And you're like, well, would you like to get your spine checked? And they're like, oh my gosh, this is great. And we're failing to see that our marketing is appealing to a very small section of our community, the 10%. Now, the 90% of the community, how do they view that 10% that is currently accessing and utilizing chiropractic care? They think they're nuts. They think they're kooks. They think what, you bring your kid to a chiropractor? This is crazy. This is what's going on in Australia. My point is this, is we've been utilizing antiquated marketing strategies that focus on the 10% who already like us. And we've built this weird sort of platform around chiropractic. Wheatgrass, the chemtrails, the GMOs. There's like a lot of baggage now that goes along with chiropractic. So now the 90%, the general person, if they were to look at your Facebook feed, they would sit there and say chiropractic. Let's say maybe even they met you and they talked to you and they were like, this chiropractic thing sounds great. And they begin to look on social media, on the internet. They begin to research a little bit. And then they begin to think like, wow, if I go see Dr. Knowles, do I have to drink wheatgrass every day? Do I have to do CrossFit? Do I have to post about chemtrails? It's all these things. Do I have to hate Monsanto? Do I have to hate
espresso?
Right. Well, and that's the thing. And we get beat up about that, right? Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're drinking caffeine. But listen, it's the one thing. It's chiropractic. Now, what you choose to do outside of there, I can honor and respect those choices. But what I'm suggesting is that the marketing strategies, we are really good at marketing to the 10%. And so this is what I figured out. This was the biggest revelation to me. When I speak, and I'll probably ask this at Mile High if we touch on this, I ask chiropractors, how many of you are actively accepting new patients? And everybody in the room always raises their hand, always. And I said, well, this is really interesting to me because we are creating more chiropractors. So every year there's more chiropractors in the market. You are all seeing new patients and our market share is going down. So this is the reality. The reality is this. Because you saw new patients this week, right?
Right.
Right. So here's the reality. What happens is a person comes into my office and I say, wow, they're a new patient. I see them for a little while and then they leave my office and they go to your office. And when they show up at your office, you call them a new patient. Mm-hmm. And they're with you for a little while and they leave your office and they go to Jack Borla's office. And Jack Borla calls them a new patient. That's the only mathematical explanation for how there can be an increasing number of chiropractors and a decreasing number of market share is that we're just recycling the same population amongst ourselves. So the construct is this: rather than market to those people, we need to step out of our box and we need to learn how to market to those people who are not currently under chiropractic care. And again, there will always be a subset of people who will not believe in chiropractic, right? And that's fine. But there's a large population of people out there who want what we have, but they don't want to buy all of the extra stuff. They're not so sure about posting on Facebook that they're against vaccines. They're not so sure about the wheatgrass because it tastes like lawnmower. They're not so sure about joining CrossFit and wearing the funny socks. All of that, those are not prerequisites to be a chiropractic patient. And if we were smart, we would begin to make that shift. The last thing inside of that construct that I want to just introduce here, and then I will definitely expand on at Mile High, is that the 90%, one of the biggest mistakes that we have made as chiropractors, in my opinion, is the overemphasization of the chiropractic adjustment. And the adjustment is the technical aspect. Even from me as, teaching in the art of the specific and having a business that, engages people to learn a technique, I'm telling you, the technique is not the value in chiropractic. And this is going to be key if we want to reach the masses. You see, the service that we provide is not the actual adjustment in and of itself. The service that a massage therapist provides is the massage. A service that a barber provides is cutting hair. But the service that a medical doctor provides is not the administration of drugs and surgery. In fact, if I were to go into a massage therapist and sign up for an hour massage, it would be unheard of that they tell me at the beginning of the massage, Shawn, you're super relaxed. Your muscle tone is perfect. You don't need a massage. I would freak out. I would say, I paid for an hour. That's not about whether or not I need one or not. But it would be within the realm of possibility that I go into the medical doctor and I tell them, I think I'm having appendicitis. I think you should schedule me for surgery. And for them to do a workup and say, Shawn, it's not appendicitis. You're just having, some gas. I'm not going to cut your appendix out. I'm going to give you this. And the value is in the workup, in the diagnosis, in the analysis. So here's what the problem is that people in the general public think that you go to a chiropractor to get adjusted, and then this is their number one concern from what I've heard. Once you go, you have to go for the rest of your life. They feel like we create this sort of dependence, and they actually don't even understand why they would have to go for the rest of their lives. But I want to point something out. The majority of the population of your community, they do engage in tons and tons of things for their health that are merely, in their mind, preventative, like yearly mammograms, pap smears, prostate exams, yearly physicals. They get their teeth checked twice a year. It would definitely fit their paradigm to go and have their nervous system checked with frequency. Here's the thing, when they get a mammogram, they get the mammogram hoping that the results indicate that everything is fine. When they get the pap smear, they get the pap smear hoping that everything is fine. When they go to the dentist, they hope that they do not have cavities. But they know that if you go to a chiropractor, the chiropractor will always find subluxations. This is first of all, this is a flaw in our philosophy. This is a lack of understanding in actually how the human body works. And second of all, this is a flaw in the business model. Because we've hung our hat on the adjustment, this causes them to see us as a technician, like a massage therapist or a barber. And it causes them to not understand that we are actually doctors, like a medical doctor or a dentist, who gets paid to make a determination when to adjust and where to adjust. The emphasis needs to be placed on getting checked. Likewise, if you want to see kids, get them checked. Pediatrician, every newborn goes to the pediatrician regularly to be weighed and measured, and they pay for that. They don't expect that every time they go to the pediatrician is going to say that there's something wrong. In fact, to the contrary, they're doing this with the expectation just to make sure that everything is right. Now, that is actually the exact philosophy and mindset that we want them to have. So because they already subscribe to this, they would, if we proposed it this way, they would take their child to the chiropractor to have their nervous system checked just to make sure that everything is all right, provided that there was not this weird caveat that every time you brought the child in, they were going to be messed up. We always preach that, oh, look at the beautiful baby. It was born inherently perfect. Well, that's contradicted by the message that we say, and they're all subluxated. right? So we have a giant contradiction that plays with the mind of the 90%, which causes them to disengage.
Right.
If we could get the messaging right, the engagement would be huge because they are already subscribing to this. I mean, no sooner does a tooth show up, they're thinking about when should I take them to the
Right.
dentist, right? And so the mindset exists. It's not that they're dumb. It's not that they're lost. It's not that they don't get it. To the contrary, our marketing has projected onto them a very different message, and they're thinking my kid doesn't have back pain. Why would I do that? And if I did dare take my kid to the chiropractor, they're going to loop them in to lifetime adjustments for the rest of their life once a month. Versus, hey, it would just be a good idea to get checked. You don't need to be adjusted all the time, but some chiropractors can't wrap their mind around that construct. That's fine. But those that can, if they can make that shift, oh my gosh, you're serving an entire community and a population that is completely being untouched in your community. There's zero competition there from your chiropractic colleagues. And if you market effectively, they will begin to engage. And like we talked about, when they engage you, the sales cycle is different. Because when somebody says to me, Shawn, what would it look like to get my child checked? You're asking me, now I don't need to have a $19 initial exam. I can say, well, listen, it's $250 for the initial workup, and then from there we charge $85 every time you get your child checked. You're asking me. Why? Because you want that. And I think that just makes your life super easy if we could understand that. And a few chiropractors need to stay back and take care of the 10%, right? Because we have to service them, but we need some chiropractors to really begin to get this 90% mindset.
Absolutely, and it all goes back to what's your target and what are you offering. I want to ask you a couple other super important things and talk about the Black Diamond Club. One, tell people about what you're covering in your breakout session at Mile High.
Breakout session specifically, I'm going to walk the participants through a series of exercises that will help them to define their ideal client and target market. So of course we'll talk about why that's important, but I want to actually give some actual exercises. I'm going to walk you through a thought process of how you can define that. Listen, that is probably, with the people that I work with, the number one thing that people struggle with most is they cannot articulate who they help. And if I do this all the time, part of a professional referral strategy, if I'm talking to you and I say, hey, so Danny, you do network spinal analysis, I do upper cervical. Obviously, there's things that network could help and benefit my patients that upper cervical might not be able to take care of. Tell me who would be the best referral to you. And when you are unable to articulate that, then I can't send you people, right? And so what you need to say to me is, listen, so I do great work with athletes, particularly athletes who are into movement like CrossFit, functional training, Olympic lifting. I do really well with them. So if you ever see patients that are coming in that are engaged in those types of activities, maybe they've had some long-term chronic injuries that are not responding, that would be a great referral to me. Now, the next time I see that in my office, automatic, the first thing that I'll think about is, you know what, Danny Knowles, right? And so getting your target and your ideal client clear just really will help you to broaden your ability to market your practice. So why it's important, how to define it, and then how to implement and apply that into practice is what we're going to discuss.
And that will help the people that are there move from the Atlas and a Pulse philosophy.
Yes. Here's the other thing. You know what? Here's the greatest benefit to working through this. And this is part of the exercise, but if you ever look at your appointment book when you come into work and you look at your appointment book and you see a couple names on there that you're like, oh really? Like Danny's coming in today? Like, oh God. That does not exist in my world, right? And I say this all the time because I specifically only work with people with whom I do my best work. I've created my marketing that naturally attracts those people into my world and repels the people who I don't do my best work with. I'm a big believer in a concept that I call raving fans, sideliners, and haters. And I think that sometimes, and this applies to you as well, it's easy to look on social media and see people talking bad about you and feel a certain way about that. But I actually take a certain degree of pride and joy when I see that, because I understand that the world necessarily needs to break down into three categories. There's going to be my raving fans. And I think that, when you posted on social media that we were doing this podcast, somebody wrote, I'm a raving fan. Kelly Robb said, I'm a raving fan.
Love Kelly.
So what this means is that your raving fans, they're going to do whatever you're selling. Like, oh, I'm selling a pen today. It's a special art of the specific pen, and then they're going to buy it, right? They're just down for whatever it is that you're doing. They're down for the program. Then you have your haters. It doesn't matter if I said I'm giving away $100 bills. These people, there are people on social media that would find a way to say, I'm not taking the $100 bills from him. And they would, say why it was done. And that's fine because it doesn't matter what I'm doing. They're not down for it. Here's the thing is there's a middle group that I call the sideliners. They haven't made a decision one way or the other. And the key to great marketing is to polarize the sideliners, and people don't really understand this. We need to cause them to make a choice. They either need to become a hater or a raving fan, because I do business only with raving fans. And so the sideliner pool, I'm constantly doing things. When I speak, if you've heard this podcast and then you're at Mile High, you will begin to pick up that when I speak, my talks, I don't let innate flow. I don't make it up when I, get up there. They're structured and they're designed to cause you to think. And so during the process of my presentation at Mile High, you will begin to either start to feel a certain way. You will feel like, hey, I don't like this, and that's fine. Or you will feel like, wow, I really resonate with this, in which case I would create opportunities for you to further engage me, right? Again, I'm not going to just bounce you into the highest level of engagement. Hey, you like this? Do you want to open a specific chiropractic center? No, we would create low level, and we would begin to build relationship through trust and credibility. But that's the thing is we want to, the greatest product that comes out of clearly defining your ideal client and your target market is that you get to begin to work with people with whom you do your best work. And then work turns into play. No longer, I have this thing that I always say, it's a hashtag that I use. I use hashtag there is no glory in the grind. Mm-hmm. Because we've made this thing, right? Like there's a lot of popular inspirational figures that say, rise and grind. You've got to get up and grind. Well, and in chiropractic, you know what we say? In the trenches. Well, that just sounds terrible to me. Like a trench, like you're digging a ditch. Like I'm not in a trench. And if you take offense to that, too bad, because I do not vision my life being in a trench. I wouldn't want to work with somebody. When I picture someone in a trench, like their face is all dirty, their hands are beat up, and they're dirty and they're digging in a trench. That's not what chiropractic is supposed to be. I go to work and it's play. It's fun. I work with people that I love working with. In no way at any time would I even relate that to being in a trench. I would say like I go to work and I'm in Disneyland, right? It's just like we're on fun rides, we're having fun, we're laughing, because all of my patients are of that mindset. To build a practice that's like that, you have to clearly know who your target market is.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that makes me think of something, which is I really enjoyed. I want to thank you again for the invitation to join you and Lacey and Jack Borla at Ruby Hills. That was an incredible time, beautiful place. I remember when you posted, or it was you or Lacey, I don't recall, but posted like, we hit our goal and we're joining Ruby Hills and so on. And I loved that post because I love seeing people reach goals or reach milestones, whatever it is, because they're growing, right? And it's like you said, absolutely, that one thing that you wanted to get out of this is there's nothing wrong with being successful and impactful, right? Because we can be negative or a hater towards someone who's doing that versus, hey, that's awesome. Can you share something briefly about Ruby Hills, why that was what you did to get to hit that goal, or why was that a goal, or was it a reward at a certain point, or for you, or your mindset, or something like that?
So I'm a big, huge believer in anchors. Anchors are really important, and you can leverage anchors in your own life, and you can leverage anchors to influence others. And so what Lacey and I do as a couple is we have goals. And I think everybody has goals, but where I think that people go astray is they don't set rewards. And especially for small business owners and entrepreneurs, we operate more in a consequence world. If I don't do this, then I won't be able to pay the bills, right? Every new practitioner, that's where they are. Versus if I did this, then, and maybe you're not going to join a country club, starting out, but there should always be a positive consequence, right? But the most important thing is this: when there is a positive consequence, and so a lot of times people will see, oh, look, he did this or they did this, But what they're not seeing is that when there's a positive consequence, I'm very conscious to create the neurology around the feeling of being able to do that or experience
Right.
that or buy that. And
Right.
what that does is that drives me, it creates an anchor and it drives me. Just I had shared with the Black Diamond Club that I was going to add 2 new private coaching clients, and if I could accomplish that, I think I gave myself 24 hours. That if I could accomplish it in 24 hours, I was going to buy a new set of Callaway Apex CF16 black golf clubs. And yesterday, I went and I got fitted and I got those golf clubs. But I was sharing with them that the neurology around that experience of getting fitted and purchasing them. And the reason why that was so important to me, the reason why I chose that was because these golf clubs I would see every week because I play a lot of golf. And every time I see them, and yes, I'm out playing, I'm out enjoying myself, but it would trigger a neurology that reminded me about the hard work that it took to get them. To get there. And it would drive me to continue that hard work to work towards the next goal. Small business owners and entrepreneurs are terrible at rewarding themselves. So
Right.
when every time, I mean, and I guarantee you this, I promise you this. So that night that we had dinner, when we drive up to Ruby Hill, and it's a spectacular looking place, especially in the daytime. But when I drive up there, every time it creates an anchor, and I realize all of this is a product of what chiropractic has given to me and the hard work that I've put in. Again,
Right.
because I don't want to be in a trench. So believe me, I enjoy Ruby Hill and I enjoy all of the amenities and the luxury that it provides me. I absolutely love it, and I'm unashamed of that. If people take
Right.
issue with that, that's their issue, not mine. But what it's doing for me is it's propelling forward, right? It's creating that
Right.
neurology that continues to drive me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Tony Robbins talks about that. Having anchors, you do the firewalk. As soon as you go through the firewalk, you have to be celebrating, right? So, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a goal. When you finish it, you have to celebrate. Otherwise, you just keep walking across the fire over and over again, and you're in fuego and in the trenches, and you're not, and there's no celebration, right? So,
Yes.
and then what is your life about? Right.
Right.
So you've got to be able to give and output, but also celebrate and enjoy while you're here. Right.
It also causes plateaus. I see that all the time in chiropractors tell me like, well, I got my practice to a certain level and then I plateaued. Well, that's because let's say that you're collecting, I don't know, 30,000 a month. Well, you can't imagine and feel what it would feel like at 60,000. And
Right.
because of that, there's no incentive to do it. Why would you work harder? Why would you press if your life would be exactly the same? And so they just stay there. It's more comfortable.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And basic neurology and basic mindset. So, is this the kind of stuff that you help people with in the Black Diamond Club?
Yeah, Black Diamond Club is marketing, sales, communication, and making sure that we have our mindset right. We talk about setting goals. We talk about anchors. Twice a year, I host every year. There's 2 seminars that I host that we don't market. There's a marketing workshop and a sales workshop. Both of them are always sold out. That's one thing too. I will say, if you look at, I market Black Diamond Club, definitely. I rarely market our marketing to 90 program. I almost never market becoming a private coaching client of mine. You never see me posting that I'm looking for an associate. The marketing systems that we have create relationship that begin once we engage in relationship that we grow over time into the different offerings that we've created. And that's the reason why that you don't see us marketing that way. So here's the trick. In Black Diamond Club, it is a super transparent environment where I very openly show the members what I'm doing. I share with them the marketing strategies and how I'm doing it. In fact, for every person that ends up in Black Diamond Club, they are able to look back in retrospect and understand the marketing that we utilize to get them in. And by being transparent with them, they're able to understand the upsell, if you will, or the evolution, depending on the degree of closeness that they would like to have in working with me. And then again, we celebrate. I mean, we set goals, we set rewards, we share when we've hit our goals, and we share our rewards. It's not a place where, what happened is, I don't know, in chiropractic, something happened where it became where we were just all against everybody, right? That was what the popular thing was. Anybody that was doing anything that was remotely good, we just attacked them. And so that was one of the reasons why I created Black Diamond Club. It's a place, I run it. It's my business, but I am not the leader. I am
Mm-hmm.
not the singular voice. I am not the one who knows everything or the final authority. It's a place to exchange ideas and mastermind.
Mm-hmm.
We do not ever, use foul language, berate each other, tell each other you're wrong. One of the things that I believe too is that there's more than one right way to do everything. That's why I can embrace something like network spinal analysis, because there has to be multiple ways to engage or to do anything. So there's not one way to do marketing. There's not one way to do a new patient exam. There's multiple ways. And so that's what Black Diamond Club is. Let's share different ways of looking at this and approaching this so that we can find what works best for us. I do believe that there is probably one best way for Danny Knowles, right? And it might not be my way. The
Right.
same thing, like, you're with our techniques, and I can honor and respect that. And it would be foolish for me to try and engage you, convince you to do upper cervical if you are already engaged and on the journey towards mastery and network spinal analysis. But the same thing goes with all of this stuff.
Of course.
I just think that,
Right.
maybe sometimes we're making a few mistakes, and the group is just about helping us to stay on point and traveling in our own paths, on our own journeys. Plus that, listen, everybody defines success differently. There's this whole thing of, how much are you collecting? Listen, some of my clients actually come to me because they want to work 3 days a week and not six.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken private clients that we've worked just to maintain their collections and cut their workload down in half. Some people have come to me and asked me if they could see half the volume of people. There's this thing in chiropractic where you have to see huge volume. Well, some people are seeing huge volume and they're burnt out, or they don't like it, or
Right.
so everybody is defining success differently, and the idea is to help each other to get to your endpoint, whatever that might be.
And that's brilliant and so awesome. So this has been a stellar podcast. This is going to be one of the most popular, most listened to ones we have ever done, because there's such great content, which I know is what you're going to be delivering when you come to Mile High. Before we close, and there will be liner notes, which we'll put together with links of how to get to you, but do you want to say anything about how people can find you?
Well, sure. First of all, they can contact me at the website www.drshawndill.com, DRSHAWNDILL.com. And when this goes up, they can still join Black Diamond Club by going to www.theblackdiamond.club. That membership is only going to be open until the Sunday of Mile High. So I've chosen at Sunday at Mile High, we're going to close up membership, most likely for the year. What that will allow us to do is the current members, right now there's 180 members in Black Diamond Club, and that will allow us for the rest of the year to really focus. I'm a big planner, so we're going to focus half of the year on getting everything right so that we can enjoy 2017. And I don't want to have to deal with new people popping in and out. And so if you've been on the fence, if you've been a sideliner, and this podcast might be one of the things that moves you over to raving fan, I want to encourage you to jump in. It's $50 a month. There's no contract. You could stop at any time if you get in there and you're like, hey, this is not for me. There's no, I'm not holding people hostage. You'll see if you join the environment there is not, it's very pleasant. You get a podcast every Monday. Every single Monday, I offer it's a 20-minute podcast. It's designed for you to listen to on, doing your cardio or on your way to work. You get a monthly newsletter. It's not really a newsletter. It's called the Carbonell Marketing Sheet, where I discuss things that other people are doing in other industries and how you might apply that to your particular practice. It's not just chiropractors, by the way. We have a couple of other healthcare professionals and other service industry professionals that are in the group. And you have, of course, the Facebook group Mastermind. So if you've been on the fence, you have until Sunday of Mile High to get registered.
Well, there you go. And you're going to meet a lot of people at Mile High. So this is going to be awesome for everybody involved. And I do want to say one other date, because coming up December 31st, early congratulations for your coming wedding.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Which
I
is going to be
appreciate
very
that.
exciting in the Philippines, and can't wait. It's going to be super exciting. Very, big congratulations for you and Lacey. You guys are just great people, and I really adore both of you. So I appreciate you. So thank you, everybody, for joining us on the Mile High podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, please share the iTunes link or share feedback online. Help people grow their vision, deepen their philosophy, and increase their business strategies, and look forward to seeing Dr. Shawn Dill and you at Mile High, August 18th to 21st, www.milehighchiro.org. Like our page on Facebook, www.facebook.com/Mile High Chiro.